I can't remember a time where I've been as content eating. I probably slowed my pace down a little bit. I was eating for the function of sustaining myself. I wasn't eating because, dang it, it's a rough day. That's really sad to say, but like, I'm sure that's attributing 100% of the weight gain I've had over life. But I mean, it's probably become such a habit. Like, I probably wolf down my food fast, even in moments of joy. Like, I'm just a pig.
2 weeks ago, you gained 4.6 pounds.
Yeah.
After a triumphant return home from visiting me. 4.6 pounds. I mean, it's quite a feat in 1 week. Next week, it was 2.8. So you were headed in the right direction. So I give you all the credit in the world for almost cutting that in half and only gaining 2.8. And then this week, I was expecting, if I could get away with 1.4, we could cut that in half and get 1.4 weight gain. I mean, I'll take it. At this point, I'll take it. Let's try to break even inevitably over the next couple weeks and try to maintain until you're able to start moving in the right direction after everything is settled with the job situation. So this week, get that weight on my screen and I see 1.2 pounds down, loss, negative. What's going on, man? What did you do this week that you did not do the 2 weeks prior? I need to know. You need to tell me. You need to give me insight. I hope to God. I know with your memory, which is about 3 seconds into the past, is what you're able to maintain to retain. I don't know if you'll be able to give me the details I'm looking for, but I wanted you to identify some patterns, since we're into patterns on this episode, where you can tell me why you lost 1.2, but the last 2 weeks prior, you gained 4.6 and 2.8.
All right. So the last conversation we had was valuable. I thought that was probably one of the most meaningful we had. And I think some of it just stuck with me. I acknowledged in my own mind that this was not necessarily a time that I'm going to be focused on weight loss. But I wanted to make sure that I wasn't gaining weight, and or at least if I did, I was hoping for something similar to what your expectations were. Keep it within a pound or so, at least slow the bleeding significantly. So I was just more, intentional is the good word to use, man. I said it before, but it's true. I gave myself some slack and allowed myself. We talked at length, I think, last time about, there's a big gap between whatever I did to gain 4 point some pounds and
Yes.
what I did to, lose a pound or whatever, or even maintain. So I felt like that was a reasonable goal, and I was aiming honestly to stay within a 1 pound range either way of where I was. And I didn't really stress too much, but at the same time, I was just thoughtful about what I did put into my body. And so, I mean, there was definitely times where I was relaxed, but including the day before the weigh-in. So yeah, I mean, it worked out nicely. I tried to incorporate a little bit more time between my last meal and my first meal, trying to think more about, towards the fasting type routine.
Mm-hmm.
So I finished up my meals a little bit earlier most nights, and I started doing a little bit earlier bedtime. I was going to bed somewhere between 11 and 1, and I made a more intentional effort to go to bed between 10 and 11.
Mm-hmm.
So those were things that changed. And then, to be honest with you, another conversation we had recently was one of my triggers being loneliness. And so I started really getting after my relationship with God. Like, I started praying, intentionally every day. And it wasn't necessarily about weight loss, but just getting closer closer to him. And so I made more and more time for him. Basically some kind of effort to get more connected. And I found myself not as needy for food. I was also, had a little bit of, good news going late in last week that kind of carried me over with my mental state, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I have to say that all those things combined, it worked out pretty well because I didn't feel like I was really sacrificing a whole lot. I just was not being dumb. And I think the candy bars are super unproductive. I think I'm, because I was able to calm down on those, and I got myself an air fryer and a waffle maker, and I've started to pay attention to some recipes, incorporating more of a concentration of protein, but still focused on, ingredients that were pleasing to me. Not overdoing protein or powders or, other sources, but just staying with natural stuff that was good. And so, a couple of different recipes I was able to find online. And so, yeah, I mean, I had mixed results with those. Some of them were really good, and they're sustainable. I can probably make those once in a while. So all those things together amounted to a fairly successful week.
Well, there's no doubt that the more you lean on God, the less you lean on food. And that's easier said than done, but it's a practice that with time you can perfect, and it can cause you to put some of that energy right now that you're putting into escape when it comes to candy bars and other extracurricular activities that would work against your weight loss goal, and move that towards having a relationship with him and as a guiding force in your life during times of stress, just like you were doing. You decided to take part of your week and focus on him, and you're having a difficult time right now in life, so you turn to him during those times instead of turning to escape with food. And it once it becomes gratifying, once that relationship builds, you'll be doing it more often, and it's a different type of satisfaction. That's the reason why it's not easy to flip the switch and just turn to him 100% of the time, and leave the candy bars in the convenience section. But it's look it you got to start somewhere, and that's you've made a tremendous, just in 1 week, made a tremendous shift, enough to be able to start losing rather than gaining. So that, in addition to the experimentation with food, because I think creativity is such an important factor. If you can make this diet interesting and effective at the same time, there's no way you could possibly fail. It takes a little bit of effort. I mean, you can find prepared foods that are very low in carb and high in fat, because the low carb movement became popular over the past few years, and there's a lot of options in grocery stores that you can go to, keto sections. They have whole aisles devoted to it where you can shop low carb, and you could find prepared items to consume that would take no effort on your part other than going to the grocery store and buying them. Or you can make your own, which is more elaborate. But either way, the goal is try to find foods that you really enjoy that are low carb that you can consume on a regular basis, and you can cycle between them. And then you can get excited about what you're eating. And if you can have some excitement behind the diet, then it's going to be effective for you, because that's the one thing that your old diet wasn't missing, was excitement. Okay. That was at the very central core of why you eat the way you have for the past 40 plus years. It's because it makes you feel so good. So if you can find foods that make you feel good enough to be able to consume them on a regular basis, yet the carb level's low enough to promote weight loss, that's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah.
That needs to be the primary objective as you're trying to gain your foothold, is what foods can I use that are going to be productive, but I can get really excited about when I wake up in the morning.
Yeah, I think that's something that I realized this week was, that's the cost of those candy bars. Like the candy bars are good, but they're not fulfilling, and they're addicting. So
Yes,
when I have one, it can turn into two or four. So,
easy,
and then
easy,
that turns a day that would have been a deficit and where I've been, well behaved all the way around otherwise into a potential gain of weight day.
easy.
And,
Yep.
and instead I just moderated the amount of carbs that I had within regular meals that I would enjoy, you
Hmm.
know, uh, going to the biscuits, like I was eating in my truck. I had breakfast, and instead of doing the, the, just the sausage and egg, I had one piece of the biscuit, with it.
Hmm.
So, and then that was a little bit more satisfying. I didn't feel like I was doing without too much. Um, yeah, I mean, like it was all doable. It was all manageable. I was able to have throughout the day, multiple items that would have added up to, one or two candy bars, but it was throughout the whole day. So I found that to be satisfying throughout this week.
Yes. So,
Multiple
so
meals
cutting.
were impacted, in a more
Mhm.
happy way, if you want to call it that.
And how did it feel? How did it feel for you to make that change? Because obviously it resulted in what we wanted, more than what we wanted, because we were just settling on trying to make it even for the week.
Yeah.
And you ended up losing over a pound. So how do you feel though about the fact that you did this, made this change? And is it sustainable? Is it something that you could see yourself doing week after week?
Yeah, I think for this period of time where I'm having a lot of transition and influx of things, this seems pretty reasonable to expect I should be able to maintain this. And I feel more confident that, it definitely won't be adding to the weight. It's just, maybe that I'm keeping it right at level,
Hmm.
but, that's a win in itself. And if I
It's a
can
huge
drop a
one.
pound here or there, that'd be amazing. And
Yes.
I'm going to continue to kind of just, I feel like the game plan is set, to continue what I did this week, next week, because
Yes.
I don't feel like it's unrealistic. I got away from the candy bars by satisfying myself more, moderation throughout the day as opposed to just focusing it all in one, time period in the middle of the day with complete junk.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think if I incorporate that and satisfy my, you know, my challenges in life with, a better source, then I think I'm in good shape. I think it's gonna help make a big difference.
And I think it becomes easier if you make a gradual transition. A little more
Yeah.
God, a little less food, and go week after week. Try to move a little bit more in that direction, so that way that's not a shock to the system.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about decades worth of habits here that you're dealing with every single day of your life. People really need to realize when you're taking something like this, a pattern, a compulsion, an addiction with you throughout your entire life, and suddenly you're trying to do something about it. It's not an easy task, especially when there's scenarios in life that are happening that are making life more difficult than it normally is. You tend to want to go more in that direction. So it's challenging to be able to make any transition, any positive transition during that time. So the fact that this week you moved away enough to be able to lose a pound is amazing. It's something you should be very proud of. It's something that should really inspire you to show what can be done, what you're capable of accomplishing, even under difficult circumstances when it comes to this, because this is your number one um, challenge in life is to be able to transition away from using food for comfort. That's number one on your list because that's what you've always done. So when stress is high like it is now, If you can make any positive transition at all during that time, it's the biggest win of them all. I mean, it's a bigger win. This week is a bigger win than any of the weeks that we've experienced 3 or 4 pound weight loss during a normal period of life. I feel.
I agree. I think something was different when we talked last time, and I don't know. I think some of the events maybe that went on the week before that meeting, but it carried in more from our conversation, carried in to this week, and I'm so grateful for that because it really somehow you got through to me, man. I don't know what happened, dude. You've been trying this for 35 years, and now it's starting to maybe seep in a little bit.
Well, it's all about repetition. I never did this on a weekly basis for 6 months before. Okay? I mean, I've had periods of time that have spanned a couple weeks, but then they fall by the wayside, and it's always temporary. But never had over 6 months of weekly meeting with you on this particular topic ever in the history of our relationship, and we've known each other for 30 years.
I'm so lucky, dude.
So how something has to give if you're going to devote over half a year to trying to make a difference. You're showing up, you're listening, you're offering your feedback. You take the week and try to do what you can, and to see what kind of results you can achieve. I mean, all of that pays off. Like there's just no way it can't. You know full well as a sports fan, you go out there and you practice on the football field. The more you practice, the more consistent you are, the better you get. Right? I mean, and it's all about repetition. It's all about going out and putting in the reps, putting in the time, putting in the effort. And the more you do of that, the better player you become, whatever it is that you do. And that's what this is. This is a representation of that. You're showing up every week and you're trying to find a game plan that works for you, that's realistic for you to be able to consistently lose weight. And then you stumble upon hard times over the past month, and suddenly you gain 4.6 and 2.8 pounds. So you had a rough 2 weeks, but you recollected yourself. And we had our nice conversation last week, which was, like you said, was pivotal. But ultimately, you decided this week, I'm going to do something different. Like, I'm going to be conscious of what I'm doing. When I'm eating a meal, I know that I have two goals. Like, one, I want to enjoy myself, but two, I don't want to harm myself. Like, I want to do both at the same time. If I can accomplish that, then it's a win. It's a huge win. So you tried to do just that throughout the entire week, and most of your meals, you were that way. You were thinking, what can I cut the carbs in half in this meal? What can I do? What can I do to still enjoy it while not going overboard? And it paid off. It paid off big. And that's something that you should take to heart, because it shows that the more intentional you are, just the more you pay attention every single meal that you eat, that you don't zone out and just immerse yourself in the joy that's about to transpire. You pause and you decide, like, I'm going to enjoy this, but I'm going to be prudent about it. And that's what you did. You introduced that into this week. That wasn't part of the last 2 weeks. The 2 weeks prior, it wasn't that way. It was more or less, I'm just going to eat what I want to eat. And I'm going to have you may have controlled yourself to some degree, but it certainly was very loose throughout those 2 weeks. And then suddenly this past week, you decided, I'm going to put some limitations on myself. And you did enough of that to lose a pound at a time where we were expecting nothing, at best. So that's an incredible achievement.
Yeah. I mean, and I really think that the limitations didn't feel like limitations. I think after really being super focused for a while and, cutting out of most meals, all carbs basically, or 90% of them, like getting to the point where I'm cutting out 50% of the carbs or 60% of the carbs, but still having some enjoyment in the meal. That's become the new, like, reasonable, and I can still at least not harm myself and possibly even improve my situation. So
that's the goal.
Yeah, it is. I'm very happy that that I went down a pound. I'm very happy. That was, like you said, I mean, the pivotal. It needed to go in the other direction, or at least stop the bleeding, and we did.
Yeah, yeah. It's a boost of confidence that you definitely needed, but it's the only reason why it happened is because you decided to do something different. Like this past week, tangibly, just like you described, was different than the weeks prior. You decided I'm going to put forth some effort. Like I'm not going to make an excuse this week. I'm going to just look at what I'm doing and see if I can improve enough to be able to achieve what we talked about, which is just try to sustain this until the job's intact, and then I can go back to losing 1 to 2 pounds a week.
If you and I weren't talking, I just don't even want to know. The last 2 or 3 meetings, like, kept the. I mean, even in the midst of challenge, like, it kept it together instead of completely just going all the way off the rails and never to come back, or to wait months before it comes back. I'm increasingly aware that I am, I control me, but that's it. That's all I control.
That's right.
And so that's a hard thing to come to grips with. But I'm there. I'm finally there, and I think that helps a lot too. Like, there's going to be things that change. There's going to be things that happen that are out of my control. But if I focus on the things that I control, if I really can, and I've been, asking for help with this, then it's going to be okay. And if I know it's going to be okay, ultimately, if I have that peace inside, then I'm able to not use food as an emotional thing.
Mhm.
And that's really, this week, there was very limited, if any, probably very limited, but there was very limited emotion involved in my meals. I was
Okay.
more content with probably equal or maybe even a touch less food.
Mhm.
So, yeah, like, I hope I can continue that. I think I can.
Oh, I
Think I
know you
can.
can. I know you're capable. Anything you can do for a week, you can do consistently if you make the choice to do so. It's a challenge. There's temptation along the way. There's your mind will try to make you forget about the let's focus on what it is I'm eating this meal and just focus on getting whatever I can this meal and taking advantage of that. Like there's temptations that seep in, and certainly when stress goes up, even throughout the day, if stress is higher at a certain point during the day or your mood starts to decline for whatever reason, your brain tends to push you down that path. Like I can use food to numb this out. I don't have to deal with this now. I can feel better by going and grabbing 4 or 5 candy bars and just having them with me, and then eventually you eat them all. So that's easy to do because, and it's been a habit for many years. But what you did this week, you proved that you can put the brakes on that and plan ahead enough to be able to say, I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to do this.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever been as content eating. I can't remember a time where I've been as content eating. I probably slowed my pace down a little bit, not necessarily because I was trying to, but because it wasn't an emotion attached to it. I was eating
Mhm.
for the function of sustaining myself. I wasn't eating because, dang it, it's a rough day, like, and that's really sad to say, but like, that's probably a majority, that I'm sure that's attributing 100% of the weight gain I've had over
Oh,
life. And
yes.
but I mean, it's probably become such a habit. Like, I probably wolfed down my food. You've hung out with me. I
Oh,
mean,
I
I
have.
probably wolfed that down fast,
Yes.
even in moments of joy. Like, I'm just
Yes.
a pig,
Yeah.
like, so. Um, this wasn't the case as much this week. I was really much more under control, and yeah, I'm fired up, dude.
I,
It's good,
the,
good stuff.
a big reason behind that is because you thought before you acted. Like you didn't just go into autopilot mode. It's very easy if you don't think. If your conscious mind, the front part of your brain. Like if I'm thinking about what I'm doing, logically I'm thinking, is this doing me any good or not? Or should I do something different? Is there another? Because there's consequences to what I'm about to do. And that's what makes us human. We have that logical part to our brain. We're able to think and rationalize if this is a good idea or not. Whereas the rest of our brain is just trying to make us happy, trying to comfortable, keep us safe. Like keep us safe. I mean, I use using the term "keep us safe" is probably the best way to describe it, because it doesn't feel safe when you're under stress. It feels like there's a we got to try to find something to counteract that, and ultimately, it works. Like food works. So pushing you in that direction is something that is understandable. It's something that anybody can get attached to that. And that's been the coping mechanism. But what you've done this week is you've inserted, let me think about this before I act, before I go down that path. Let me think about what I'm trying to do here. Like, and that's why the emotion was removed, because the emotion is what just drives you to do something without thinking. I mean, that drives you, right? But then when you start thinking about it, you decide, is it a good idea or not? It's like if you get angry and your emotions telling you to punch someone in the face, but then you think about it, it's like, I mean, they may deserve it, but ultimately, it's not a good idea. Like it's nothing good is going to come out of this. So then you stop yourself. So if you just focused on the anger that was compelling you to attack somebody, you would do it. You would do it. You wouldn't think about it. You would do it. But when you think about it, you're like, hey, like there's consequences to this. I probably should not behave in that way. Even though I'm angry, I don't have to do that. So same deal.
It's embarrassing.
Here. Yeah.
It's embarrassing to say this, but I probably learned that, that in an earlier age, to control and manage your anger, right? Like, I was probably taught that intentionally. Like, when you want to punch somebody in the face, just, you don't have to do it. But with food, it's opposite. It's been so reinforced, and by my own doing. It's nobody's fault other than mine. But like, I've reinforced it over the course of so many decades of just, that is your answer. That's your go-to. Yeah. And so it's not even, I don't know how to put it, but like you're saying, like, if you just think before you do, you've been telling me to think before I do for 30 some years.
Yeah.
Like I'm finally able to put it in practice. It's not for like, I didn't care all the time. You know what I mean? Like there's been times where, the last couple of weeks where I gained weight, I would say I cared, right? On some level, I cared about what I was doing, but at the same time, it wasn't the priority,
right,
to focus or be conscious that it needed to be. And, our conversations helped me get there, but I have to give you a lot of credit. And because I've heard you say, you just got to think before you do. I don't know how many times, right? Like you told me that, but it finally was able to happen. And I'm just grateful it happened. Yeah.
The results prove that it happened. And number one, the reason that it became a habit is because it works. Like it was serving it serves a purpose in your life. It allows me to feel better. When I'm not feeling so good, it allows me to feel better. It works. It's not something that doesn't work to serve the purpose that it's been serving, but there's consequences to it. The consequences to it are you gain weight and you harm your health and potentially live a shorter life. They're the consequences. Take those consequences away and, sign me up. I'm doing it all day long too. But you have to think, if punching somebody in the face, consequences of hurting somebody physically, going to jail over it, getting the person to take out revenge. There's so many different negatives. Nothing positive comes out of it. Yeah, I may feel better for a second, but then I have to face all the consequences, right? When it comes to this, when it comes to food, the consequences are I might die young, but I don't have to worry about that right now because I'm still alive. Like I don't have to deal with that now. I don't have to think about it. I could have a heart attack. Well, I haven't had one, so I don't have to worry about that either. I usually don't think about that until it happens. And the way I look, if you don't, you can ignore the way you look. It's easy to just get older and get bigger and just ignore it, just not think about it, especially after you get married and then you get into a stable relationship. You're not like going overboard to try and look a certain way for people. It's just you kind of set into a certain pattern. That just happens to most people. Unfortunately, that's just the way that the human mind works. You get complacent. So if the look is not propelling you, like you look at yourself and overly um, you're not overly concerned with that, it's very easy to just continuously do this because it works. It does allow you to escape the moment. It works every time. But when you start focusing on the negatives, like, I don't want to have a heart attack at 50. I don't want to die at 60. I don't want to. I'd like to look better. I feel more confident if I look better, if I look slimmer. And I think it's a good role model for my kids to be in shape, so they do the same thing. Then when that becomes the focus, you think there's a consequence to me doing this, and then you start getting motivated. Like, oh, okay, I'll start making better choices. I don't have to completely revamp my diet and become a health freak. I'll just be able to make choices that allow me to lose weight and allow me to moderate and do so in a reasonable way. And that's what you've been doing in the first half of this through a 6-month period. But then with the stress hit and you got derailed for a bit, you've recollected yourself this past week. And I want you to also remember the habit when you're talking about, not punching someone in the face. A lot of us are taught that when we're growing up. Consequences to doing certain things probably shouldn't do, and our parents try to teach us that. But a lot of families, and probably yours is one of them, when it comes to food, you probably grew up with your parents eating in a similar way, right? So it's very
I would say
easy.
so, yeah.
Yeah, it's very easy for that to become normal. If you grow up that way, it becomes something that you just don't see any other way of living. There's no other reason for it. I grew up this way. It's worked from when I was a kid. My parents did it. You don't even think about it because it's what you grew up with. It becomes normalized, and that, unfortunately, people that whatever you grow up with becomes the norm. So if you grow up in a very abusive, toxic household, that becomes your norm, and then you can become abusive or you can become toxic in many ways, and you have a lot of consequences from growing up that way that you have to deal with. But whatever it is that you take with you from your childhood, at some point in time, you got to, if there's anything negative that was there, you got to deal with it. And these eating patterns are what you're dealing with now, and you're dealing with them in an incredible way. I mean, you've experienced, I think, a necessary shift over the past month of difficult life circumstances, and it put you in a situation where you had to deal with that, and you had a couple weeks where you were gravitating towards the norm of what you normally do, and now you've shifted back to what it is that you should be doing, and you've done it in just an incredible way when you look at the fact that 4.6, 2.8 minus 1.2, losing 1.2 pounds after that. And it only took 2 weeks to get back on track and start to look at this in a different way. And you're practicing these skills, the skills of paying attention before each meal and being conscious of what you're doing, and then thinking it over before you act. Those are habits. Those are things that become easier as time goes on. And this week, you practiced it in the midst of stress, which is one of the first times that's ever happened, probably the first time it's ever happened in a week time span where you've said, all right, I'm going to make some different choices this week, despite the fact that my life is not headed down the trajectory that I would love at this point in time. I still could do something about this. I can still control what I do and what I don't do when it comes to what it is that I'm eating. You did just that.
Yeah, I think the habits that were established in the first months of this process right now really enabled me to cut the gaining and get back to at least a more moderate approach. And if I hadn't done that and I was trying to start now, that would not go well, but I think the progress that's been made a big impact on being able to turn this around this week.
Well, the good thing is that you were, prior to this week, you had lost a total of 20.2 pounds. So you were on You were on the borderline. This week it could have been under your weight loss could have gone under 20, but it didn't because you lost 1.2. You're 21.4 pounds down since you started. So
Woo.
from week 1 to now. So that's something to celebrate, man. The 20 pounds just grew as opposed to shrunk, the amount of weight that you lost. So that's an incredible, really something to really be proud of when you're dealing with something like this in the midst of stress. For you to have a week like this, the first week like this under these circumstances, is something I hope you can take to heart as to how impressive it is to be able to conquer that the way that you have this week. It's something that you should really take to heart as to how much of an achievement it is. That people that have not been in this particular situation, they wouldn't be able to relate. Or, especially people that maybe they're in the situation and haven't really tried to make that change. But it takes a lot of effort to be able to get to the point where you can start consciously deciding what you're going to do every single time that you eat and making better choices throughout the week to be able to get to a weight loss during a stressful time period like this.
Yeah. Yeah. All of this is building on itself every week, I feel like. And
you're right.
Again, talking with you and processing everything. And even when it's a bad week, we got to deal with it. I got to look at it, and you're helping me bring things to my conscience that I would not do on my own. Yeah, I mean, like you phrased it well last week. Just there's a huge gap between what you did to do this much damage and what you did to make progress or even maintain. So yeah, my aim point really mentally was just maintain, just do the things that I was doing when I was maintaining ugly numbers like 350, and then I found myself, hey, I could just cut back this part of the biscuit, and that would have only happened if we had been doing what we've been doing.
Yes.
So, and then that goes back to like the cutting back more significantly over the course of time, but also the processing every week, like all that combined. If somebody challenges themselves to really focus for even probably a month to establish better habits, I feel like then at that point, if their mind is strong, and they can be in a good place when inevitable things happen, they can at least do what I'm doing. And yeah, I mean, like I think I'll just take the same approach this week. I'm confident that I won't gain weight. If I maintain, I'm going to be okay with it right now during this period. And if I lose, I'm just going to be really, really happy. And I don't mind being really, really happy. I mean, if we just drop a pound a week right now, that'd be great. If I could just keep rolling like that,
absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
I think you bring up a great point with the first half. Your stress level was low. You were going through your normal work routine. Everything was fine. First half of this, you were losing about 2 pounds a week, and that's where the weight gain occurred, was in the first half, the first 3 months, and you ended up
weight loss
during that period. Yeah, about 24. Lost about 24 pounds in the first 3 months, so it was about 2 pounds a week. And during that time, your stress level was normal. Let's say it was just your normal, family and work and everything was going okay. And during that time, 2 pounds a week, you built some habits because you were going into the holidays. You built some habits where you had an opportunity during that time to really go overboard at Thanksgiving and Christmas Eve, and you decide to introduce what you practice this week, which is, I'm going to look at what I got before me and I'm going to have a good time, but I'm not going to go overboard. Like, I'm going to make some conscious decisions as to what I eat and what I don't eat. So you started practicing that during what is the second most difficult time. The first most difficult is during stress. Second most difficult is during the holidays, during celebration times, as far as being able to control what it is you eat. But you practiced it successfully during those periods, having good weeks during times where most people would gain 5 pounds easy. So you accomplished that, and you were building up throughout the first 3 months, you were building up the moderation skills by being able to decide, what am I going to do this week to make it a good week? Like, I'm gonna cut down on, like you said, I'm gonna throw the biscuit aside, or I'm gonna reduce the carbs by doing this. I can do an alternative to what I normally do, still have a good meal, but have less of that. Have less of the carbs to keep the carbs as low as possible. And you did that, and it was 2 pounds a week. So those skills that you built up the first 3 months, like you say, they were practiced in this past week. It's just you never had to practice them up until now during a really stressful time where life was chaotic and you
Yep.
had a lot going on. There was no routine. Like, you haven't had a routine because of the job scenario right now. That routine was broken. And in addition to that, there's just some unknowns for the future, and all of that builds with it a lot of stress that normally is placated with lots and lots of food. But this week, you decided, I'm going to introduce the skills that I already had in the first 3 months that I was using in order to lose weight, introduce those again, and start making better choices while still being able to enjoy the meals that I'm consuming. And you did that. You did that to perfection this week, because and any weight loss during a time like this is just as good as it gets. Like, you can't we can maintain, like you said, if we can maintain that until life is back in order, that's great. I mean, that's a huge accomplishment during a time where you'd normally be adding 2, 3, 4, 5 pounds a week. So, anything from maintaining to losing is a huge bonus at this point in time. And so, being able to look at that number just shows that you really, really applied yourself this week and made enough of a change, because you're talking about a swing from 4.6 up, 2.8 up to 1.2 down. That's a lot of weight that you prevented yourself from gaining, in addition to losing the 1.2 pounds on top of that, because of whatever it is you did. So you did enough to make that happen. That just shows you really did apply yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you brought me a level of consciousness over the last couple of weeks, and it took a while to get it through my thick skull. But, again, like I figured out with your help, what's the void? Like, you got to fill the void, whatever that void is. What is the trigger? What is the thing that's actually the root of why I'm doing, why I'm repeating negative behavior? Like, it was just that feeling. It doesn't even have to be real, but it's the feeling of any kind of loneliness or lacking in an emotional way. And
Mm-hmm.
so once that's identified, you just gotta, whatever your thing is, that's what's missing, figure out how to fill that gap, because I think that's a big key here. Like, I think that, combined with the habits that were built up and processing with you, like, saved me big time here. If I'd have kept up with the 5 pound weight gain rate for 3 weeks, I'd be up 15. And instead, we slowed it down on week 2, and then we screeched it to a halt in week 3.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
I mean, the net is what, up 6 or 7 since the beginning of this 3 week period. So,
Yeah.
as opposed to up 15. I mean, that's a big difference. I could have been 15 at this point if I didn't have
Yes.
my faculties come back about me. So, and this is despite the fact that I'm at high levels of uncertainty about things.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. I mean, just whatever it is that somebody's got draining them mentally or emotionally, I would say that's a part of this deal. If you want to make this a serious thing, and you've got a battle like I'm going through that's going to take a long time, you're going to want to identify that early in the process, so that when you get to the challenging parts, you're able to overcome.
Yes. Yes. That's very wise advice. You got to identify the negative trigger. You got to see what those emotions are that you're looking to replace, and what are you replacing those emotions with. And if you're replacing it with something that's destructive, that has consequences to it, then you got to find something else that's constructive to replace those emotions, to fill the void that that's missing in life. And if it's food, if it's drugs, if it's something that's destructive to you, then you look for, what can I fill it? Can I fill it with something different that's going to build me up? And certainly, relationship with God is first and foremost. That's going to be a driving force. You can take that everywhere you go. The friends that love you and care for you, and family that just want to lift you up and be by your side, that's going to lift you up as well. Having a purpose in life, having a place where you could devote yourself to, get up in the morning and earn a living and be able to not only generate income but make a difference in the world in a positive way, and that's going to be a driving force. So there are things that are people are missing in their lives that need to be, that they feel as if they need to replace with something else. It's just they're replacing it with the wrong things, and they need to look towards what are the paths, what's the path that I can take that's going to be, it's going to build me up as a human being, and is going to take that what's missing in my life and fill it with something that has purpose and that's worthwhile, and that's going to build me up over time, make me a better human being than I am now. And that's the mystery of life for so many people. But ultimately, you're figuring it out as you go along. You're identifying why it is that I do what I do. We're identifying that every week here. What's propelling me to move in this direction? Having been moving in this direction for your entire life, and what is it? What is it that I can do to move in a different direction? And you're literally every week you're discovering that gradually, and developing new patterns as the weeks go on, to the point where they're going to become a part of who you are. So we're going to become what you do. It's going to replace what it is that you've always done with something that's brand new, but something that's going to take you down a much better path in life. That's what this is all leading to. And you're seeing it. You're seeing the culmination of this past week under the circumstances you're in. You're seeing it firsthand.
I think this week was really the turn of that corner. And that's quite empowering, man. I'm reluctant to go talking trash because I was on a nice streak for a while, and I don't want to get too ahead of myself.
Yes, I encourage you not to do so.
But I think that I was quick before all this. I was quick to just say, yeah, I'm I could be emotional eater. It would just be a tribute to stress. Mm-hmm. But just leaving it there is not enough. You have to really dig deeper. And if I don't have you in here doing this, like, I don't think I ever dig deeper. Like, that's a big, big connection, because that's how I figured out the approach I need to take to mentally get myself right to do this. Like, I hope that I'm coming back to you with another good number next week, because I feel like I'm in the same place, like a good place from mm-hmm. leaving our conversation last week.
Oh, I could tell.
So, yeah, it's like, if I can conquer this battle right here, like, this is like, I do feel like it should be all downhill from here.
I agree, man. This is a turning point. You couldn't have defined it any better than that, because you got a week where you're tested. I mean, and that's what this is. It's a test. The past 3 weeks have been a test, and 2 of them have been a test where you have gravitated back to what you've always done. This past week, totally different. Totally different. I mean, it's a complete contrast to the 2 weeks prior, because instead of gaining a significant amount of weight, you lost weight, and you did it because you decided this week, there's a different way. I can handle this differently than what I've been doing. I can pay attention. All I have to do is open my eyes when I go into this, and I can decide I'm going to do something different. And that doing something different is going to take me down a different path, a path that's going to be fulfilling, a path that will lead me to happiness. That temporary excitement of eating a candy bar that lasts, 3 minutes, and you end up having 500 extra calories. It's exciting for 3 minutes, but once it's over, you got to live with those consequences for the rest of the week. And it's like, is it really worth it? Is it worth it for me to have to go the extra mile, to have the extra calories? Whereas at the end of the week, I'm going to be disappointed with what I see and I'm not going to be making the progress that I want. Is it worth doing that versus still having a meal I enjoy, but preventing it from causing damage on the back end? Which option should I take? And there's only one right answer when it comes to that. I mean, it ultimately there is only right. You take the wrong answer, then you got to keep digging deeper until you find why do I feel like I have to keep doing this? Why can't I find the other path fulfilling as well, and be able to see what the positives are from taking that path, because those positives need to be factored in too. There's a lot of like celebration we're doing right now with the number that you're able to deliver this week that you would not be doing had you went the same path as you did last week or the week prior, and you would have gained another 3 pounds. Then what? Then it wouldn't have been a great week. Then it would have been like, oh well, I don't know what I'm going to do now. I'm going to see, and then there's all about the whole disappointment in yourself because you could have done better, but you didn't. And then that leads to more of the same behavior because you get frustrated and then you go down the path of, I don't want to feel frustrated. So I'll go ahead and drown my frustration out with some Snickers bars and then I can forget about it for another 10 minutes and then have to deal with it again. So ultimately that pattern is either going to continue or it's going to end. And this week you prove that you're capable of ending it even in the midst of uncertainty in life. And that's like the ultimate goal, is to be able to be in that type of situation but still say I can still control this. Like I have the wherewithal within me to control what it is that I'm doing this week when it comes to what I eat, despite other areas of my life that right now I'm not able to control the outcome of. I can control the outcome of this. I can control the outcome of that number at the end of the week. I always have control of that. I can always make good enough choices where that number is not going to go against me. That's what you're doing.
You're right. You're right.
I think it's awesome.
We're getting there. Yeah,
we are.
This was a big week.
Huge week. This is the biggest week of them all, I think. I really do. I really honestly do, because one, it broke a 2-week streak of weight gain. So I mean, that in and of itself, looking back, that was the biggest of all the weeks that you've had. 2 weeks in the past, 1.7 and 4.6 in the past. Those were the only 2 weeks of consecutive weight gain in the past 6 months, but almost 7 months. The 4.6 and 2.8, those 2 weeks prior to now, 4.6 and 2.8 were the two biggest weight gain weeks of them all. And they coincide with the most stressful period that you've experienced throughout the past 7 months. So ultimately, this week, because you broke that streak, no more weight gain, but you ended up actually losing, shows. I mean, that's a confidence boost, because it shows that even under duress, you're able to make this work as long as you pay attention, as long as you become intentional every time that you enter a convenience store, anytime that it's time for a meal, anytime that you're around food, you start thinking before you eat. And I'm what am I going to do that's going to benefit me and that I can still get enjoyment out of, and I can balance that equation each meal to the point where I can walk out at the end of the week when I weigh in a happy man, and you keep things moving in that direction. That's what it's all about. And you proved this week under stress it's possible.
That is why I really feel like it is a turning point, because that's never happens.
Never happened before in your life. It never has, because every single time you've encountered stress, the diet's gone by the wayside. Every time. And that was the fear. The past 2 weeks, the 2 weeks of the 4.6 and 2.8 pound weight gain, the fear was, does that continue or not? And that was the whole, the whole crux of the conversation that we had together was, let's stop the bleeding, man. Let's go ahead and focus on just ending the weight gain, just maintaining, just sustaining. Don't put the pressure on yourself to have to deliver those kind of results that you were in the first half, because you got to get things in order in your life first before you're able to really focus on this and start delivering some 2 pound a week results again. So let's just go ahead and focus on maintaining and sustaining, so that way we don't get out of control. And that became the focus. But by doing that, you ended up seeing that, yeah, I can actually implement things, the techniques that I've used in the first half of this whole process. I can implement them even when I'm stressed. I can still consciously decide what I do when it's time to eat and make better choices, good enough choices that either lead to me not gaining weight or even losing weight at a time where in the past I would have just been gaining 5 pounds a week, easy every single week. That would have been. Now you've never charted. We don't have the graphs to be able to prove how much weight you would gain typically when the situations like this would happen in the past. But I predict based on that 4.6 pound that I could think you could duplicate that on a weekly basis, no problem.
I'm afraid you're right.
Yeah, yeah.
I really don't want to find out again.
No, I don't want to find out either. So I'm all for that. we can end on that lovely note. Man, this is awesome. I just congratulate you, dude, for really, you put forth the effort this week. You really proved what was possible when you become intentional. You really did. That's what this week was all about, man. And it doesn't matter what's going on around you, all the noise, all the uncertainty, all the confusion that's happening in life that surrounds you. It doesn't have to impact what's going on in here. It doesn't have to impact you from within. You can still make conscious decisions that are going to lead you down the right path, despite all the noise that surrounds you. That's a possibility. It can be done. You proved it this week. And I'm confident that what you're going to gain out of this week is the fact that you now see with your own two eyes that it's something that you can achieve.
I agree. And if I can do it, I know others can. So I'm hoping one day people are going to look back at this and see that they can do whatever seems insurmountable.
Look, man, you're going to get to your goal. We're going to have an episode where you're going to have lost over 100 pounds, and people are going to be able to look back at the whole week by week trajectory of somebody who's been overweight their entire life, who's been struggling with weight since they were a kid all the way up till now. And, by the time you're in your 50, in your early 50s, you're going to be at that point where you have lost that weight, and people be able to just look back at the diary, which is what this is. Ultimately, a diary of your week to week path towards developing a new set of rules that you live your life by, and a new framework that brought you ultimately to one of the most important goals that you could achieve, that increases your lifespan, your quality of life, everything that goes along with it, confidence. So ultimately, you're going to get there. I'm 100% sure of it, and I'm just glad that we're able to document it all, so that way other people can benefit from the entire process. I think that's important. It's important to see other people will follow in your footsteps. I just know it.
I hope so.
I love you, man.
Love you too. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. See you next week.
All right.
But if you